advertised with dramatic posters that proclaimed failure means a drowning death. The escape proved to be a sensation. Houdini soon modified the escape to include the milk can being locked inside a wooden chest, being chained or padlocked. Houdini performed the milk can escape as a regular part of his act for only 4 years, but it has remained one of the acts most associated with him. Houdini's brother, Theodore Houdin, continued to perform the milk can escape in its wooden chest variant into the 1940s. The American Museum of Magic has the milk can, an overboard box used by Houdini.
Let's see. These are just like getting into more with the different things that he did before he died. Chinese water torture cell. Around 1912, the vast number of imitators prompted Houdini to replace his milk can act with the Chinese water torture cell. In this escape, Houdini's feet were locked in stocks, and he was lowered upside down into a tank filled with water. The mahogany and metal cell featured a glass front through which audiences could clearly see Houdini. The stocks were locked in the top of the cell, and its curtains concealed his escape. In the earliest version of the torture cell, a metal cage was lowered into the cell, and Houdini was enclosed inside that. While making the escape more difficult, the cage prevented Houdini from turning. The cage bars also offered a protection should the front glass break. The original cell was built in England when Houdini first performed the escape for the audience of one person as part of the one-act play he called Houdini Upside Down. This was so he could copyright the effect and have grounds to sue imitators, which he did. While the escape was advertised as the Chinese water torture cell, or the water torture cell, Houdini always referred to it as Upside Down, or USD. The first public performance of the USD was at the Circus Busch in Berlin. On September 24, 1912, Houdini continued to perform the escape until his death in 1926.
Sorry, my eyes are burning. Suspended straitjacket escape. This is one of my favorites, honestly. One of Houdini's most popular publicity stunts was to have himself strapped into a regulation straitjacket and suspended by his ankles from a tall building or crane. Houdini would then make his escape in full view of the assembled crowd. In many cases, Houdini drew tens of thousands of onlookers who brought city traffic to a halt. Houdini would sometimes ensure press coverage by performing the escape from the office building of a local newspaper. That's kind of funny. In New York City, Houdini performed the suspended straitjacket escape from a crane being used to build the subway. After flinging his body in the air, he escaped from the straitjacket. Starting from when he was hoisted up in the air by the crane to when the straitjacket was completely off, it took him 2 minutes and 37 seconds. There is film footage in the Library of Congress of Houdini performing the escape. Films of his escapes are also shown at the Houdini Museum in Scranton, Pennsylvania. After being battered against a building in high winds during one escape, Houdini performed the escape with a visible safety wire on his ankle so that he could be pulled away from the building if necessary. The idea for the upside-down escape was given to Houdini by a young boy named Randolph Osborne Douglas, March 31st, 1895 to December 5th, 1956, when the two met at a performance at Sheffield Empire Theatre.
Overboard box escape. Another of Houdini's most famous public stunts was to escape from a nailed roped packing crate after it had been lowered into water. He first performed that escape in New York's East River on July 7, 1912. Police forbid him from using one of the piers, so he hired a tugboat and invited press on board. Houdini was locked in handcuffs with leg irons, then nailed into the crate which was roped and weighed down with 200 pounds of lead. The crate was then lowered into the water. He escaped in 57 seconds. The crate was pulled to the surface and found still to be intact, with the manacles inside. Houdini performed this escape many times and even performed a version on stage. First as Hammerstein's Roof Garden, where first at Hammerstein's Roof Garden, where 5,500 U.S. gallon tank was officially built, and later at the New York Hyperdome.
Hyperdome? Hippodrome.
Whatever.
Hippodrome. Buried alive stunt. Ow. Houdini performed at least 3 variations on a buried alive stunt during his career. The first was near Santa Ana, California in 1915, and it almost cost Houdini his life. Houdini was buried without a casket in a pit of earth 6 feet deep. He became exhausted and panicked while trying to dig his way to the surface and called for help. When his hand finally broke the surface, he fell unconscious and had to be pulled from the grave by his assistants. Houdini wrote in his diary that the escape was very dangerous and that the weight of the earth is killing. Houdini's second variation on Buried Alive was an endurance test designed to expose mystical Egyptian performer Raman Bey, who had claimed to use supernatural powers to remain in a sealed casket for an hour. Houdini bettered Bey on August 5th, 1926 by remaining in a sealed casket or coffin submerged in the swimming pool of New York's Hotel Shelton for 1.5 hours. Houdini claimed he did not use any trickery or supernatural powers to accomplish this feat, just controlled breathing. He repeated the feat at the YMCA in Worcester, Massachusetts on September 28, 1926, this time remaining sealed for 1 hour and 11 minutes. How? Houdini's final Buried Alive was an elaborate stage escape that featured in his full evening show. Houdini would escape after being trapped in a straitjacket, sealed in a casket, and then buried in a large tank filled with sand. While posters advertising the escape exist, playing off the Bay Challenge was boasting Egyptian fakers outdone. It is unclear whether Houdini ever performed Buried Alive on stage. The stunt was to be the feature escape of his 1927 season, but Houdini died on October 31st, that's Halloween, 1926. The bronze casket Houdini created for Buried Alive was used to transport Houdini's body from Detroit to New York following death on Halloween.
See, I like David Copperfield and Chris Angel. They've both kind of done
I like them all.
And different things. And
like
Penn and Teller are funny. In 1906, Houdini started showing films of his outside escapes as part of his vaudeville act. Vaudeville act in Boston. He presented a short film called Houdini Defeats Hackenschmidt. George Hackenschmidt was a famous wrestler of the day, and the nature of their contest is unknown as the film is lost. That sucks.
Sorry, I'm sure you saw me grabbing my chest while I was reading that last one. I was having a bit of a panic attack over the thought of having to dig my way out of a grave.
People got buried alive back in the day.
I know.
Can you imagine?
No. It terrifies me. Just the thought of being in a casket, of being in a closet, of being under a bed freaks the fuck out of me. I can't handle it. Just the thought gives me a panic attack.
It's a hell of a way to go to try to dig yourself in a casket.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't.
Well, that's why so many people actually died back in the day.
Awful. Neither Houdini's acting career nor FDC found success, and he gave up on the movie business in 1923, complaining that profits are too meager.
No, it's mine.
That was the end of that?
That part.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay.
In 1909, Houdini became fascinated with aviation. He purchased a French Voyagien biplane for $5,000 and hired a full-time mechanic, Antonia Brazek, After crashing once, he made his first successful flight on November 26th in Hamburg, Germany. The following year, Houdini toured Australia. He brought along his Voyaging biplane with the intention to be the first person in Australia to fly.
On March 18th, 1910, he made 3 flights at Diggers Rest, Victoria, near Melbourne. It was reported at the time that this was the first aerial flight in Australia, and a century later, some major news outlets still credit him with this feat. I'm guessing that it wasn't.
Probably. After completing the Australia tour, Houdini put the Voyaging into storage in England. He announced he would use it to fly from city to city during the next music hall tour, and even promised to leap from it handcuffed, and he never flew again.
In the 1920s, Houdini turned his energies towards debunking psychics and mediums, a pursuit that inspired and was followed by later-day stage magicians.
Jaquan Argamizil, known as
That's Joaquin.
Why is that name such an evil name? Joaquin Argamizilia, known as a Spaniard with X-ray eyes, claimed to be able to read handwriting or numbers on dice through closed metal boxes. Did I skip one? I did. I skipped a few. Sorry, guys. Houdini training in magic allowed him to expose frauds who had successfully fooled many scientists and academics. He was a member of the Scientific Americans Committee that offered a cash prize, which they still do, to any medium who could successfully demonstrate supernatural abilities. None was able to do so, and the prize was never collected.
Ooh.
Yeah. You have to read 2 because I messed it up.
Looks like you only missed 1. First to be tested was medium George Valentine of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. As his fame as Ghostbuster grew, Houdini took to attending seances in disguise, accompanied by a reporter and police officer. Possibly the most famous medium whom he debunked was Mina Crandon, also known as Marjorie.
And then I read that one, and then you need to read that
one. Right, but you didn't skip that many, just one of mine. So this would be like you read the next one. In 1924, he was exposed by Houdini as a fraud. Oh, we're talking about Joaquin Argamasilla.
I don't know why I have such a hard time with that name, Joaquin.
Because you're crazy, dear. In 1924, he was exposed by Houdini as a fraud. Argamasilla peeked through his simple blindfold and lifted up the edge of the box so he could look inside it without others noticing. What a numbnuts.
It's an extra eyes. Houdini also investigated the Italian medium Nino Pescario, whom he considered to be fraudulent. I didn't put it in here, but I thought he started investigating psychics because his mom died. And he was trying to get a hold of his mom. She had like a code word or something.
Huh.
I don't know why I didn't put that in there. This is a huge thing. His mom died.
Maybe it's on the back. There's still more. There's like a whole bunch.
No, because she died in 1913. Fascinating.
Houdini's exposing of phony mediums has inspired other magicians to follow suit, including the Amazing Randy, Dorothy Dietrich, Penn and Teller, and Nick Brooks.
Penn and Teller is the one that does most of this stuff, though.
Penn and Teller's the one with the loud, obnoxious big guy, and then the dude that doesn't really talk.
Yeah, okay. He's not really making it.
He just doesn't talk.
It's part of their act, like Jay Silent Bob. Come on now.
Right, I'm just saying. That's how I identify who they are. That's why I asked.
Where'd you stop at? Goodness gracious.
Houdini's exposing of floating mediums, so you'd be a Houdini chronicled.
Houdini chronicled his debunking exploits in his book, A Magician Among the Spirits.
Ooh. Before Houdini died, he and his wife agreed that if Houdini found it possible to communicate after death, he would communicate the message, Rosabelle will leave.
Which I heard that they didn't even know what his code was to this day.
A secret code which they agreed to use. Rosabelle was their favorite song.
But I heard that nobody even knows what the code is. Only Penn and Teller and a few magicians. But for some reason, apparently, this website said that they knew the code. I don't know. Bess held yearly seances on Halloween for 10 years after Houdini's death. She did claim to have contact through Arthur Ford in 1929 when Ford conveyed the secret code, but Bess later said the incident had been faked. See, I haven't watched one where Penn and Teller and all the rest of the people that are still part of the SAM did a seance on Halloween before. They still do it sometimes in his mansion or whatever.
Interesting. The code seems to have been such that it could be broken by Ford or his associates using existing clues. Evidence to this effect was discovered by Ford's biographer after he died in 1971.
In 1936, after a last unsuccessful seance on the roof of Knickerbocker Hotel, she put out the candle that she had kept burning beside a photograph of Houdini since his death. In 1943, Bess said that 10 years is long enough to wait for any man.
How about no time is long? Like 10 minutes?
They were truly in love with each other.
I'm playing. The tradition of holding a seance for Houdini continues, held by magicians throughout the world. The official Houdini seance was organized in the 1940s by Sidney Hollis Radner, a Houdini aficionado from Holyoke, Massachusetts. Let me lay down for a second. My back.
Yearly Houdini seances are also conducted in Chicago at the Excalibur nightclub by necromancer Neil Tobin on behalf of the Chicago Assembly of Society. Necromancer is supposed to bring back the dead. In case she isn't. Of American magicians, and at the Houdini Museum in Scranton by magician Dorothy Dietrich, who previously held them at New York's Magic Townhouse with such magical notables as Houdini's biographer Walter B. Gibson and Melbourne Christopher.
My turn! Oh. Gibson was asked by Bess Houdini to carry on the original seance tradition. After doing them for many years at New York's Magic Townhouse, before he died, Walter passed on the tradition of conducting the original seances to Dorothy Dietrich. Very interesting.
In 1926, Harry Houdini hired H.P. Lovecraft and his friend C.M. Eddy Jr. to provide an entire book about debunking religious miracles, which was to be called The Cancer of Superstition. Houdini had earlier asked Lovecraft to write an article about astrology, for which he had $75. This article does not survive.
Lovecraft's detailed synopsis for Cancer does survive, as do 3 chapters of the treatise written by Eddy. Houdini's death derailed the plans, as his widow did not wish to pursue the project.
I like the image of classic magicians. Houdini was short and stocky and typically appeared on stage in a long frock coat and tie. Most biographers gave his height at 5 feet 5 inches, but descriptions vary. Houdini was also said to be slightly bow-legged, which aided in his ability to gain slack during his rope escapes.
Interesting. Alright. Houdini made the only known recordings of his voice on Edison wax cylinders on October 29th, 1914 in Flatbush, New York. On them, Houdini practices several different introductory speeches for his famous Chinese water torture cell. He also invites his sister Gladys to recite a poem. Houdini then recites the same poem in German. The six wax cylinders were discovered in the collection of magician John Mulholland after his death in 1970. They are part of the David Copperfield collection. I actually heard about that. There you go.
Harry Houdini died of... Oh, wait. I can't say it. So, what do you guys remember Harry dying of? Like I said, I'm about to tell you the answer now. But I'm going to give you one more chance. Do you remember him dying of appendicitis? Or the Chinese water torture? Or liver failure? What do you guys remember? I'll tell you the answer now.
Ooh! I know it!
Yeah, because you listened to the Mandela effect with me, weirdo.
Yeah, but I'm going to tell you, I want to say what I think it was. Or what I thought it was. When we were listening to somebody else do that little spiel like she just did, I honest to God thought he died in the water thing where he was like...
Chinese water torture.
Yeah. Where he had to get out of the jacket and then, get out of the water.
See, that's what I remember too, but later on...
Like,
it wasn't.
I'd have put money on that was the answer. You know what I mean?
I remember the scene in the movie where he's breaking the glass and everything and trying to get out, and the time is going out, and then there's blood and stuff everywhere, and he dies. Whatever. It's not true.
But seriously, like if I was on one of those shows where you can make money for getting the answer right, I'd have lost because I really, honest to God, thought that it was that.
Nope. Harry Houdini died of peritonitis, secondary to a ruptured appendix, at 1:26 p.m. on October 31st, 1926, in room 401 at Detroit's Grace Hospital, age 52. In his final days, he believed that he would recover, but his last words before dying were reportedly, "I'm tired of fighting."
Oh, poor baby. Where are we at? Witnesses to an incident at Houdini's dressing room in the Princess Theater in Montreal speculated that Houdini's death was caused by a McGill University student, Jocelyn Gordon Whitehead, born in 1895, died in 1954, who repeatedly struck Houdini's abdomen.
I don't know if you knew Houdini would test his strength by tensing up his six-pack and having people. No, he is actually pretty fit.
I'm just joking.
And he would tense up his muscles though, which protect your abdomen from being hit. Well, the guy didn't give him time enough to do that. He's just like, "Oh, well, let's see how strong you are," and then,
he would have had to hit him pretty, low down on the right side in order to rupture it. I'm just saying.
I'm guessing he was probably pre-appendicitis anyway, and that just kind of pushed it along.
Yeah, so it was already injured.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. The accounts of the witness, students named. Is that name again?
Nope, that's Jacques.
Jacques Price. And Sam Smilvitz, sometimes called Jack Price and Sam Smiley, generally it corroborated one another. Price said that Whitehead asked Houdini if he believed in the miracles of the Bible and whether it was true that punches in the stomach did not hurt him. He then delivered some very hammer-like blows below the belt. Houdini was reclining in a couch at the time, having broken his ankle while performing several days earlier. So he wasn't expecting it. He wasn't able to stand there and flex his tummy to protect himself.
Price said that Houdini winced at each blow and stopped Whitehead suddenly in the midst of a punch, gesturing that he had enough, and adding that he had no opportunity to prepare himself against the blows. and he did not expect Whitehead to strike him so suddenly and forcefully. Had his ankle not been broken, he would have risen from the couch into a better position to brace himself.
Yeah,
You gotta stand up.
hit your core.
Sitting doesn't really do it, You can't really... I mean, you can, but it's not as... It's not as good, You can't really tense exactly the muscles that you need to tense.
Throughout the evening, Houdini performed in great pain. He was unable to sleep and remained in constant pain for the next 2 days, but did not seek medical help. When he finally saw a doctor, he was found to have a fever of 102 and acute appendicitis and was advised to have immediate surgery.
Oh, jeez.
He could have lived, you guys, but no, he's a stubborn man.
Aren't most? He ignored the advice and decided to go on with the show. When Houdini arrived at the Garrick Theater in Detroit, Michigan on October 24th, 1926 for what would have been his last performance, he had a fever of 104. Damn. His brain's boiling at that point. Despite the diagnosis, Houdini took the stage. He should not have taken the stage.
Nope, he should have gotten surgery.
But he was a dumbass.
He was reported to have passed out during the show, but was revived and continued. Afterwards, he was hospitalized at Detroit's Grace Hospital.
Damn it. Never gonna be this goddamn level.
Well, if you're paying attention,
I'm paying attention to both. I'm ADHD. I am. It is unclear whether the dressing room incident caused Houdini's eventual death, as the relationship between blunt trauma and appendicitis is uncertain. So what we need to do is take the person with a healthy appendix and punch them in it repeatedly to see if it ruptures.
That makes sense.
Well, if they're already at the hospital, they could just have it removed and be fine.
One theory suggests that Houdini was unaware that he was suffering from appendicitis and might have been aware had he not received blows to the stomach.
Interesting. After taking statements from Price and Smilovitz, Houdini's insurance company concluded that the death was due to the dressing room incident and paid double indemnity. Holy shit. See, you need to get a life insurance policy on me and then wait until I trip over something and kill myself. Because you know it's going to happen.
Houdini's funeral was held on November 4th, 1926 in New York City with more than 2,000 mourners in attendance. He was interned in the Macpaula Cemetery in Glendale, Queens, with the crest of the Society of American Magicians inscribed in the gravesite.
A statuary bust was added to the Exandra in 1927, a rarity because graven images are forbidden in Jewish cemeteries. Dun, dun, dun.
In 1975, the bust was destroyed by vandals. Why do kids do that shit?
Because they're assholes?
Don't mess with cemeteries, you dicks. I hope they haunt you. Temporary busts were placed at the grave until 2011 when a group who came to be called the Houdini Commandos from the Houdini Museum in Scranton, Pennsylvania, placed a permanent bust with the permission of Houdini family and the cemetery.
I hope they haunt you.
That's messed up. Like, all these old stones and stuff in these cemeteries and stuff are getting destroyed because of stupid teenagers.
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying. It's funny because out of the blue, you're like, I hope they haunt you. I'm like, oh, that's funny. The Society of American Magicians took responsibilities for the upkeep of the site. As Houdini had willed a large sum of money to the organization, he had grown from one club to 5,000 to 6,000 dues paying membership worldwide. It's a lot of magicians. Most of them aren't very good, I'm sure.
I think you have to be the best of the best to be a part of the club. The payment of the upkeep was abandoned by the Society's Dean, George Schnettler, who said Houdini paid for perpetual care, but there's nobody in the cemetery to provide it, adding that the operator of the cemetery, David Jacobson, sends us a bill for upkeep every year, but we never pay it because he never provided any care. Members of the Society tidy the graves themselves. Well, as long as they're doing it.
Huh.
So that guy's just taking their money.
So it would seem.
Douchebag.
Machpelah Cemetery operator Jacobson said they never paid the cemetery for any restoration of the Houdini family plot in my tenure since 1988, claiming that the money came from the cemetery's dwindling funds.
They didn't pay it because you didn't do.
You do, then you get paid. That's
The
how that
granite
works.
monuments of Houdini's sister Gladys and brother Leopold were also destroyed by vandals.
It's like if you had a normal job. You have to do the job, and then you get paid.
Yeah, but those stupid vandals destroyed his brother and sister's grave too.
Yeah, well, they're assholes. Fucking kids. For many years until recently, the Houdini gravesite has been only cared for by Dorothy Dietrich and Dick Brooks of the Houdini Museum in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Scranton.
The Society of American Magicians at its National Council meeting in Boca Raton, Florida in 2013, under the promoting of the Houdini Museum, Dorothy Dietrich and Dick Brooks voted to assume the financial responsibilities for the care and maintenance of the Houdini gravesite.
In MUM magazine, the Society's official magazine, President Dal Sanders announced Harry Houdini is an icon as revered as Elvis Presley or Marilyn Monroe. He is not only a magical icon, his gravesite bears the seal of Society of American Magicians. That seal is our brand, and we should be proud to protect it. This gravesite is clearly our responsibility, and I'm proud to report that the National Council unanimously voted to maintain Houdini's final resting place. I was doing so well. Maintain.
The Houdini Gravesite Restoration Committee, under the chairmanship of National President David Bowers, is working closely with the National President Kenrick Ice MacDonald to see this project to completion. Bowers said it is a foregone conclusion of the funding request because Houdini is responsible for the Society of American Magicians being what it is today. We owe a debt of gratitude to him. Like Bowers, MacDonald said, the motivation behind the repairs is to properly honor the grave of the Babe Ruth of magicians. This is hallowed ground, he said. When you ask people about magicians, the first thing that they say is Harry Houdini.
Yes, absolutely. While the actual plot will remain under the control of Machpelah Cemetery Management, the Society of American Magicians, with the help of the Houdini Museum in Pennsylvania, will be in charge of the restoration. What she said.
Magicians Dorothy Dietrich and Dick Brooks have been caring for the escaped artist Queen's grave over the years. This is a monument where people go and visit on a daily basis, said Dietrich, who is spearheading restoration efforts. The nearly 800-year-old popular plot at the Machpelah Cemetery has fallen into disrepair over the years. The Houdini Museum has teamed with the Society of American Magicians, one of the oldest fraternal magic organizations in the world, to give the beloved site a facelift. The organization has a specific Houdini grave site committee made up of 9 members, headed by President-elect David Bowers, who brought this project to the Society's attention. Kenrick Ice MacDonald, the current president of the Society of American Magicians, said, You have to know the history. Houdini served as president from 1917 until his death in 1926. Houdini's burial site needs an infusion of cash to restore it to its former glory. Magician Dietrich said that the repair could cost tens of thousands of dollars after consulting with glass experts and grave artisans. It's a wonderful project, but it's taken a lifetime to get people interested. This time it's long overdue, and it's great that it's happening. Houdini was a living superhero, Dietrich said. He wasn't just a magician and escape artist, he was a great humanitarian. To this day, society holds a broken wand ceremony at the grave every November.
Aww. Houdini's widow Bess died of a heart attack on February 11, 1943, aged 67, in Needles, California, while on a train en route from Los Angeles to New York City. That sucks.
She had expressed a wish to be buried next to her husband, but instead was interred 35 miles due north to the Gate of Heaven Cemetery in Westchester County, New York, as her Catholic family refused to allow her to be buried in a Jewish cemetery.
Honest to God, I don't see what the point is. You're being buried.
It's bullshit.
Which, honestly, you take up so much space being buried, you might as well just get cremated, because eventually we're going to end up having to take the bodies out and burn them all, because there's not going to be anywhere else for us to
Maybe
build.
like the Londons and the catacomb, you have to...
The underground.
They had to unbury or bury 3 people deep sometimes, and...
Ew. That would suck. The Washington Post stated that the press conference was not arranged by the family of Houdini. Instead, the Post reported it was orchestrated by authors Kalush and Sloman, who hired the PR firm Dan Cloris Communications to promote their book. Interesting. Very interesting.
You skipped.
What are you talking about?
This is like, what are you talking about? A book. We haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. On March 22nd, 2007, Houdini's grandnephew, the grandson of his brother Theo, George Hardin, announced that the courts would be asked to allow exhumation of Houdini's body to investigate the possibility of Houdini being murdered by spiritualists, as suggested in the biography of The Secret Life of Houdini.
In a statement given to the Houdini Museum in Scranton, the family of Bess Houdini opposed the application and suggested it was publicly a ploy of the book. See, we won't even let her be buried next to him. What the hell do you care?
Yeah, really. I already read that. Remember? I boo-booed.
In 2008, it was revealed the parties involved never filed legal papers to perform an exhumation. But you know, it's their business anyway.
Right?
I'm sorry, but if you have a couple that's truly in love with each other,
not your business, bitches.
They should be buried together.
What they should do is now they should unbury Bess and put her next to him. Because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed that I don't know why I didn't put the death of his mom in there. But somebody's choosing to play their game, so we can't get that information.
I can close this game at any time.
Well, can you look up how Houdini's mom died? And what day?
What's her name? I know we read it. Where is Houdini's mummy?
Cecilia Steiner.
Cecilia?
Yes. Or Cecilia Wise. Or Cecilia
Steiner.
Let's look up
E-I or I-E?
E-I. Or look up Houdini's mom, Cecilia.
Cecilia Steiner Weiss. That's what it's popped up with. Cecilia Weiss died on July 17, 1913, after suffering a stroke while on vacation with Harding in Ashbury Park, New Jersey. The funeral was delayed so Houdini could travel back from Europe to see her one last time.
That was part of the reason why he started doing the seances and stuff, was because he wanted to see his mom, speak to his mom, and he was never able to, so he started realizing that people are fake. And he didn't like that people were swindling money from other people.
From innocent peoples.
Okay. Anyway, now, like and subscribe.
Please and thank you.
And happy Halloween, guys.
Happy Halloween. This is Halloween. This is Halloween. Sorry.
I was wondering, how are you guys all celebrating today? And do you guys have costumes? Are you dressing up as? I think I really should go kind of a mixture of 70s and I don't know, maybe I'll post a picture, you guys.
Well, are we going to your grandma's house for dinner?
Yeah, tomorrow.
And then after dinner, we'll come home and hand out candy to the trick-or-treaters.
Well, usually that happens before that, yeah.
What?
They do it before dark.
They do it before dark? Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that.
I should go to my grandparents at 5. It's my grandmother's birthday. If anybody knows my grandmother, you know that it kind of fits.
I don't really know what I'm...
I love her dearly.
I guess I'm going to be one of those wizards or something. I've got a glow-in-the-dark wand and
a mask.
A little mask and a cape and everything.
Yeah, we don't know what she's going to be.
I'm really just...
She's throwing shit together, hoping it looks good.
Putting something on. Next year I'll get a mask or something that actually works like with a cape.
Mixture of disco 70s housewife with a cat outfit. It's interesting.
Anyway. Happy Halloween!
Happy. Anyways. I'll see you guys later.
Bye.